before we get into anything, I have to ask you.
Yes.
How tall are you?
6'4.5".
See, now I'm a bit skeptical because you use the title the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad, but our boss Josh, he's 6'7". So tall is a very relative term.
True. In my work, in my steel toe boots I wear for work, they give me about 3 extra inches. So I do get up to about 6'7" in my work boots. But yeah, that's
so. Damien,
yes.
Who are you? You're obviously Australian. I love your accent. I was mentioning backstage. You remind me your voice before your image popped onto my screen. I thought I might have been talking to Hugh Jackman, but and then it was you. So
it was only me.
It was only you, and yeah, the disappointment. But no, I'm actually very excited to be talking to you, and I'm very excited about hearing your deconversion story, which we'll start with, and we'll get into a little bit of your podcast and all that. But tell us what your beliefs were, what they are now, and how you got from there to here.
Yeah, no worries. I'll happily explain that. So who I am now, my name is Damien. I am by day, I'm a mild-mannered IT person. By night, how can I say? I jump on Twitter to engage in conversations with Christians and try and make them think about what they believe. Right now, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in the existence of gods. I don't know what a god is. And even if gods did exist, I don't know how they benefit the world. And in particular, when we look at the question of morality, I believe we can make the case that secular morality is superior to theistic-based morality systems.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. How I got from there. So in my past, I was a teenage convert.
To what?
There is a bit of a story. So I converted after the Gideon Society came to my school and dropped off a whole heap of New Testament and Psalms. So they gave these little books, probably about like that big,
right.
You can put in your pocket, that kind of stuff. And a personal crisis that I was going through at home got me to accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior. But it was around that time when the Catholic Church sexual abuse scandal broke out. And so I had this thing about not going to church, and I think my parents had a thing about me not going to church as well. Eventually, the first church that I went to was a Lutheran church.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I fell in with a what would you call it? A fundamentalist charismatic group that believed in demons causing issues, baptism in the Holy Spirit,
right.
six-day creationism, that kind of stuff. After I got sick of them, I went to there's a story behind that as well. After I left them, I went to a Church of Christ for a couple of years, and they're fairly mild-mannered people. And then after that, I went to a Baptist church.
Mm-hmm. And were you bouncing around these different churches because you didn't like the ideas they were teaching, or
no? It was just more changes in life.
Okay.
For a start. So, for example, when I left my Lutheran church, the girl I was going out with at the time went to that church, and just to make things not awkward, I left. Yeah, I left that and so fell in with this fundamentalist charismatic group. Then I think the only church I've really walked away from was this fundamentalist charismatic group, because they were very controlling of your personal life.
Mm-hmm.
They there's a bit of a story about when my wife and I got married. Our relationship. So in this church, anyone who wanted to date a fellow member had to run the relationship past the leadership.
That sounds like a cult.
Yeah.
In hindsight, yes. Yes. But I was always this free thinker. Yeah, well, in some ways I was a free thinker, in some ways I wasn't. But in this case, because I'm the one who has to deal with the relationship, it's my decision to make. But anyway, they eventually blessed it, for want of a better word. But there were just other things as well. Like, for example, if you weren't at the door 15 minutes before service started, they go, "Where were you? Why did you take so long?"
Really?
Yeah, stuff like that. They would mark your attendance. That you were expected to be at the Friday night care group or the Wednesday night care group. If there's a church-wide prayer meeting, hey, we need you. You're expected to be at that as well. One thing that might explain the mentality is that this church group originated in Thailand, and in Asian cultures, the whole thing about face is very big, is very important. So by not going to their church is kind of like slapping them in the face. It's like, hold on, you're causing me to lose. I'm responsible for you. You're causing me to lose face. So next time, just make sure you come. It's a bad look. You'll cause the other members to stumble. If people get the idea that you don't have to attend church, then people will start not attending church. And do you want to be responsible for that? I'm dead serious. There was stuff
very
like
controlling.
That. Yeah, correct. So I eventually just got sick of it. I'm still friends with a number of the people in that church today. It's just that the environment they create is very how can I say, your faith is their faith. The way you believe is what they want you to believe is what you believe, and anything contrary will make you be seen as rebellious or not walking in the same spirit or sowing a spirit of discord, stuff like that.
Well,
yeah, I think.
Go
ahead, Caleb. I'm sorry.
While you were a believer, would you say that were you the type of Christian, especially at first, in particular, that felt that you had a lot of love for God, or it was so profound at that moment that it was the love thing that kind of got to you more than anything? Was a love of God that got you into these different faiths at first?
No. What got me in was, so basically I signed my name in the back of this Gideon's Bible. So there's a story of how I came to believe, and so basically both my mum and my dad grew up in abusive environments, and unfortunately for my mum, that meant schizophrenia, and so she would take out her traumatic childhood on both my mum and my dad, and and that would mean 3-day long arguments, stuff being thrown around and screaming, and I think there was a suicide attempt as well in there somewhere as well, and there's a couple of times where my mum was hospitalized. So what actually brought me to faith was that I think it was like 1:30 in the morning or something, and the fighting was still continuing, and sometimes the fighting would die down, but then
how old were you at this time?
Probably about 14 or 15.
Okay.
So and up until this stage, I've been questioning whether the whole Christian thing is true, because the city I grew up in was literally called the City of Churches, because there's churches everywhere everywhere, but there's lots of churches. Over my back fence, I could see a Lutheran church, and then down the road from that was a Catholic church, and then around the corner from that was a Church of Christ, and then down the street was a Baptist church, and then down the road from that was a Christadelphian hall.
I don't even know what that is.
Christadelphians are sort of in the same league as Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay,
they're very focused on end times. So I as a dumb teenage boy, I questioned the God question. And I think it was revelation that kind of scared into me. Well, hold on, all this awesome, amazing stuff is going to happen. I better be, wouldn't it be better if I was on the right side of God? And that was probably the question that started it. And then what got me to sign up, and I think literally signing up was the best way of putting it, was that, so about 1:30 in the morning, the screaming hadn't died down. And so I literally prayed, God, if you make the fighting stop, I'll sign my name in the back of that book. And like 2 seconds later, the screaming stopped. It was just this really weird silence.
Let me ask you about that. But first, I want to answer.
By all means.
I'd like while Wes is asking the question, is the Church of Christ the one akin to Mormons? So I don't know if you know the answer to this. My understanding of the Church of Christ is that it's more akin to that it is not. The Mormon Church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah. But what is your understanding of the Church of Christ? Because I'm not an expert beyond that. I know that they're not.
Okay. Well, technically, it wasn't a Church of Christ church. It was what was called a Church of Christ fellowship. So they had affiliations with the Church of Christ, so they weren't like incorporated fully into the leadership structure. Mm-hmm. Having said that, they were very inoffensive about they were like a normal church. I had no. I didn't think anything weird about them, and like this was coming. I just literally left a charismatic church, and so I came to this Church of Christ, and they were like, normal people doing normal things. It wasn't. I have heard stuff that the Church of Christ in America is almost like a cult, mm-hmm. but in Australia, definitely not. Definitely not. And I'll also say Baptist. When I say Baptist, I think you'll get the impression of like the Southern Baptists, with like Fred Phelps and Westboro Baptists and all that. But in Australia, the Baptists are literally the most inoffensive Christian group there is.
Right. And also, I should point out, there's different Baptists in the United States. So there's the Southern Baptist Convention, which is probably the largest and maybe most well-known Baptist church, and that's the one that you're probably talking about. But then there's other Baptist churches that are not affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention. Like I know people who grew up Baptist and they have completely different beliefs, but they're both called Baptist. So it can be confusing.